Welcome to Kind Connections Podcast. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys here. Kind Connections is here where it is safe to be curious. I am so excited to have my next guest joining me today. She is a very fierce advocate, not just for the people who are marginalized, but especially the people who are dealing with a lot, whether it's in the medical field, also for the people of Texas. She's also a fierce advocate for Native American rights, as well as rights of immigrants, as well as the rights for women. And so I am so happy to have this activist, advocate, mother, as well as a bright light on, because I think it is important that we have these conversations. I have little Miss Delilah joining me for the show today. Good to have you back on with me, but this is your first time on the channel on the podcast.
Thank you for having me and such a warm welcome. I appreciate it.
hmm Yeah. You know, I think, a lot of people may not know, or some people do know, but you actually ran for governor of Texas under the Green Party.
To be hardworking, honest, and compassionate. I'm a healthcare worker. I was a patient advocate first. Like many other essential workers, I worked through the pandemic and understood it is the workers who hold the power. As a mother, I know how important healthcare safety, education, and sustainability is to our communities. I stood with my community to fight for clean water, Medicare for all, worker protections, and reproductive rights. We stand in solidarity with our communities against the prison and military industrial complexes and against the expansion of resource extraction. I'm running for governor to give families and workers a seat at the table. I'm running with the Green Party because Texans deserve a choice besides the corruption of both mainstream parties. We work to place people and planet before exploitation and profits. We need Medicare for all, to end the for-profit medicine and cover every person in our state, which will save lives and be more cost efficient. We need better working conditions, unions, and worker-owned cooperatives. We need $20 an hour minimum wage and a basic income guarantee. We need to defund the police and the military and instead invest in our communities. Let's protect the pristine natural places Texas has left. Let's create a safe and healthy future for our kids. Let's focus on healthcare and education, not warfare and incarceration. As governor, I would always be on the side of the oppressed, never the oppressor. My name is Delilah Barrios. I approve this message, and I respectfully ask for your vote for governor of Texas this November.
You wear many hats. You're a mom. You are a nurse. So many different things. And my question is, what is next for you?
It's crazy because we go way back, right?
Mhm.
I met you a long time ago. And when I ran for office, I was still working as a certified surgical tech, specifically in CV surgery. And I was running for office too under the Green Party ticket. And it was just like a really intense time because all of these laws were being passed, all of these policies were coming through, and it was like, you know what I mean? Like it was the calling to represent and the calling to advocate was so strong, and it was a really rough time for a lot of people. And so yeah, I mean, I'm a very humble person, and so not a lot of people don't know that I ran for office because I don't know, it's kind of like it feels like it was so long ago, but it really wasn't. And like for me right now, I have long COVID. And so what happened to me is like they cut quarantine measures. And I had a coworker come in sick, symptomatic. And she was like, yeah, the charge nurse said I could come in because they cut the pandemic pay is what, because they did. And so it was harder for people to miss that many days. And so I got sick. And that year, when I was running for office, I ended up in the ER because they thought I was having a stroke. I was having really severe symptoms. And so I went into the ER and they were like, it was a really stressful time like I worked at that hospital and I was being treated, you know what I mean? I still had to deal with like the medical misogyny, and I still had to deal with like, oh, you're just overreacting. It's not a big deal. And then they ended up calling a stroke code on me, which means like all these people rush to you and like, you know what I mean? Like it's just a really intense time. So that happened May of that year. And ever since then, I think there was like a few months in between where I was like, I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay. And then I wasn't. I was like, something's wrong. I can't tell what's going on yet, but something's definitely wrong with me. And I started seeing all these specialists, and it eventually came about that they diagnosed me with long COVID or post-COVID syndrome. And so you get really bad fatigue. My thing is like heavy neurological symptoms. I have really bad, intense migraines, like debilitating, and just a lot of other things, fatigue, even cognitive issues, brain fog. It's a big problem because from what I'm seeing, it's like, I think the estimate is like 6 million workers are out now from long COVID because the symptoms were such that they could not continue working in their fields. And so that's what I'm dealing with. You know what I mean? Like there's only so much you can save. There's only so much help that can be offered to you. You're kind of just left to figure it out yourself as a patient. And so that's really my thing right now is like, I have to advocate for myself, advocate for fellow patients, and just try to like commiserate with each other about these symptoms and these things that are not being well studied because nobody cares, because it's over, right? COVID's not a thing anymore. And so I think that's what really takes up a lot of my energy, my very limited energy is just patient advocacy still, because I can't work. I haven't been employed for like 2 years now because, I just couldn't keep up with it. And it's really hard. It's really, really, it's like the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. So that's more or less like, I think that takes up so much of my energy is just trying to keep up to date, with the fellow long COVID, long haulers, keep up to date with like the information and just try to advocate for people to take care of themselves because this is a really bad condition to have. And everybody's like, that push to go back to normal was so heavy, you know what I mean? And there's so many people getting caught up and hurt and harmed by reluctance to even talk about it. So that's what I'm dealing with.
Wow. Is there any type of assistance, public assistance, like disability benefits or anything that they are willing to assist you with for long COVID?
No. I'm honestly, I haven't had insurance since about 6 months after I was terminated from my job. And that how it is, they're like, you got to move to Blue County, you got to move here. And it's like, people cannot just up and relocate to a place that has better services. Like they should be universally available. So I'm just like a self-pay patient and I have to beg, do a lot of begging, and try a lot of different like medicines to stay on top of some of the symptoms. So it's like I would have to like leave my home, sell it, and potentially become you know what I mean, in order to access some of those services that are available in like the better funded counties. But I don't really have a lot of options where I'm at.
Wow. There's a lot of people who maybe just hearing about this for the first time and never knew that this condition actually existed. They thought once the pandemic was over, then it's just free and clear. But people are still dealing with the ramifications of the pandemic. And really, it's, 4 years later, we're still dealing with a lot of it. And from what I've been seeing is that it's actually not over. It's just, it may have died down, but it's still ongoing.
Yeah, and I think what I'm noticing is it's kind of like an avalanche effect because repeat infections can cause a lot of neurological issues, cause a lot of organ damage that doesn't appear right away. But like there's all these young people having heart attacks, and there's all these young people with severe fatigue. And like I use a cane now because I have mobility issues, which I didn't have before I got sick. And you know, I think especially as a mom, like I'm so concerned for kids. We just don't know what's going to happen when they grow up after having like 12 or however many infections. And so it's like a labor rights issue because people are not being protected, you know, like nobody's masking anymore. There's no measures at all, right? And it's a public health crisis because like the people who live, like Texas right now has a measles outbreak, a whooping cough outbreak, and like there's a lot more rabies incidents, foxes, dogs, coyotes, things like that, because people don't want to vaccinate their dogs for rabies because they're worried about autism. And you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's like circus world over here. Like it's a bit much, you know? And I mask, and it's like, being a brown woman, I know I haven't been in the sun and I look a little washed out right now, but being a brown woman in the state was already like, people are looking at you. You know what I mean? Like I was explaining to my son who's 17, because I had like a moment of hypervigilance because I actually have had PTSD before all of this. I had that for a really long time. Like I've had it since I was like 20. And there's this thing called hypervigilance that you get sometimes when you're a PTSD patient. And it's like, it's really, it's like the overstimulation on steroids. It's pretty intense. And I had a moment like that with my son, and he was like, what's going on? Like, how can I help? Are you okay? And I had to just kind of explain how like some of these things can be triggers that other people don't notice. But as a patient, as somebody who has PTSD, like you notice things, like you're almost in a state of you're in hypervigilance. You're like, what's that sound? What's that noise? What is, you know what I mean? You're very aware, and it's like, it's hard. It's definitely hard. And so like having to explain triggers and having to explain like my mental health journey to my kids, because it's changed so drastically in such a short period of time, you know, and they're teenagers. So they're like, you know, they're trying to keep up to date and like live their own lives too, obviously, but they're just, it's this journey that they're on with me because, you know what I mean? Like they're my kids, and it's really crazy just having to even evaluate what you're going through and then explain it to other people because they want to help, you know what I mean? But it's just like, it's really hard to, I don't know. It's just really challenging.
Yeah, especially, you know, this is the time of their life when, you know, they're the most observant of, you know, different changes, because this is the time right before, you know, they leave the nest, so to speak, right? So they see everything, they notice everything, and their understanding is a lot deeper. You know, because when they're really little, it's like, you know, oh, mommy, you know, has this condition, but they don't realize the background of everything, you know, as young people. But then as they start to really understand the background, then it's like the world is opened up to them in that way. And, you know, this just goes into, you know, the issues surrounding things like healthcare, right? It's not just healthcare, but it's also labor, as you so accurately put. That there's a lot of this could have been prevented, but it really wasn't, because it feels like this was a push more for corporations to get people back to producing instead of putting people over profit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's you know what I mean? Like so considering a lot of us are sick and maybe it's a little under the radar, right? But the fellow workers have noticed that there's less coverage and there aren't as many people to take all these shifts. Sorry, my computer. They're on, you know what I mean? So they're already getting pushed. It's like a really sick extraction scheme because I mean, billionaires have just seen their wealth go up 30, 40, 50, percent, right? And all these people are just carrying the heaviest loads. Like, it's never been this bad, I don't think, on this scale in this country, as far as like workers getting burnt out, people, you know what I mean, not having enough money, poverty's surging. It's a huge issue. And I totally lost track earlier, but I was trying to say that I wear a mask when I go out, and like it's like putting a target on your back. Like, people will come up and like cough on you, and I'm not cool. I'm not, and then I'm gonna get arrested because I'm like yelling at people. You know what I mean? Because like they'll come up and cough on you. They're like, it's bad. It's really bad. People are very judgmental, and I had to tell my kids, like, I'm very aware of these things before. You know what I mean? Like, I could tell somebody's intentions real close. You know what I mean? And then they come up, and then I have to deal with it, and it just puts me in a state. And then my kids are just like, "What happened?" You know what I mean? And it all happened really quickly, but it's a thing. Like, people, a lot of, if you ever look into like the COVID conscious Twitter, like, people will come up and they'll cough on you. Literally, somebody pointed at my daughter the other day for wearing a mask, and I was like, "Hey, you got a problem?" And they're like, "Oh no." But it's just like, it's really crazy right now because it's like you're demonized. You're demonized because you're an undesirable now, right? Because you're trying to protect your health.
Yeah, I feel that same way, especially right after I got my kidney transplant, because I am now artificially immunosuppressed because I do not want my kidney to be rejected.
Yeah.
And so I would have to mask up, especially like I couldn't even, and I still feel bad about this, even though it wasn't really my fault, but I wasn't even able to attend my niece's graduation from high school because when you start getting into the numbers, like for instance, my white blood cell count was still on the lower side, and they wanted my white blood cell count to be higher before I even go around people. Even to just mask around them was still a big risk. So they said it's best to not even go.
Yeah.
And so then when I go out, and especially if it's an area where there's a lot of concentration of people, especially within an enclosed space, then it's like, yeah, I had to mask, especially. And so in the back of my mind, I would always be thinking, well, what if somebody approaches me? And I something in me just came to mind when you said people coughing on you. This is what European settlers, that's such a
Sanitized.
innocuous word. Really, European invaders came to this land and they coughed on your people and then caused them to get sick and committed genocide, not just through disease, but also through violence. So it
Correct.
feels kind of like history repeating itself once again.
It really does. It really does. And then we're just getting over, Native American Heritage Month. And this time of year is honestly so stressful for the reason that, like, the settlers and the white supremacists have this ideology. And it's like they push harder when we even try to take up a little bit of space to be visible and tell our stories. And they take it offensively, and they're like worse. From my experience, they're so much worse. And it's just like, it's a really challenging task to be like, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't bother me like all the time. I don't know how people do it. I do not have, I don't have those skills, but it seems like, that's just what they do. Like, they have this entitlement to cause sickness. They have this entitlement to steal people's energy and resources. they have this entitlement that creates really unsafe circumstances for themselves and their own people. And they just, it's like, that's all they know, you know? They just have to keep making you sick. I mean, we didn't have a lot of settlers did not know how to, you know, drink clean water, wash themselves properly, all of the things that they tried to say we were bad at, you know what I mean? And it's just like every accusation is a confession. They didn't know how to preserve food properly and dress well. And there's so many skills that they took from our people. And then how were they rewarded? Massacres, you know? I mean, there was just a anniversary of the Sand Creek massacre yesterday, 2 days ago, very recently. I mean, so many children and women, victims, innocent victims. And it's like, it does feel like history repeating itself. You can see the similarities, you know, there's a lot of indigenous activists who are very pro-Palestine, very much, you know what I mean? Because it's like, we can clearly see what this is. You know, they're just following the same plan that they used against us, except for now they have the backing of the most inflated military budget to exist.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard not to see the parallels. And I think that if you refuse to see those things, it's definitely a choice, you know? It goes so much further than indoctrination. It's like, I refuse to give up my comfort to acknowledge the reality because I don't want to be held responsible and I don't want to have to take accountability for people like me, you know, like settlers and people who came on boats and refused to acknowledge that they're on stolen land still. It's happening here. It's happening all over Turtle Island.
Have you observed a lot of this while being in the medical field as well? Has there been any examples that you can safely share about the discrimination as well as the upholding of white supremacy just through working in the medical field?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm a fierce patient advocate. I had to learn that skill on the job. You know what I mean? That's where it began. You could see the difference between people, how they're being treated. And I think it's much worse or much more visible right now too, because I only had a few instances where I was like, I had to report somebody, you know what I mean? A fellow coworker, a doctor, or somebody who I felt being unethical. And you know what I mean? It's like these patients, they're sick. They're not really aware of what's happening. They're in a very vulnerable position. Like we have to take care of people. And I saw a couple of instances, especially with regards to like mental health patients and neurodivergent patients and people of color. I did see it, and it exists, you know, and it's like, it's heartbreaking. Like, I really used to feel like I was somebody who was doing good and I was helping people. But it's like, when you think about how much the CEOs make and how many people are like not getting their cancer treatments taken care of and all of the untold, you know what I mean, numerous stories out there. And it's like that, it's hard to see the medical profession as something that doesn't create harm in these circumstances. Like, even the best, in my opinion, even the best providers will be in a position where they create harm. They cause harm for somebody. And that's like, it's so dangerous right now because there's just this heavy push, you know what I mean? Like, the way the country's going right now. And it's just like, when you're one of the only ones that's still being decent, right? And like all of your other people that you have to work with do not care. And they're not worried about that. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's really, really hard. And I feel like I don't even trust it anymore. I don't trust going to the hospital, and I don't really trust any of my providers, even though years ago I would have, and I would have never had any doubts. But it's like, how can they be objectively, you know what I mean, doing the best job that they can under the circumstances? So I just feel like it's like It's been getting worse and worse.
So I heard, and I'm tying this into my community. The reason why is because I hope that this can be a great reflection of different marginalized groups and how there's more to unite system divides us. But it was a TikToker by the name of Lavert the Baseman who said, doctors are to Black women what police are to Black men. And so in observing, like for instance, there was a couple of videos that came out within the last, I'd say 10 days of Black women on the verge of giving birth and either having to give birth in a waiting room, in an emergency room, waiting area, or they're having to leave the emergency room and just minutes later giving birth while inside of a car.
Yeah. On the side of the road.
On the side of the road. And it just goes to show how whether you're Black or brown within the medical system, you are less regarded. And so I know some people, they get upset with me when I say, yes, we need a universal healthcare system. But part of that also has to be a complete revamp and re-education into decolonization, because that's not going to completely get rid of the white supremacy that still exists within that institution.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair assessment.
I think that's absolutely fair. There's a history of nurses who are abolitionists, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, you take it into consideration, and it's like patients don't get to look up their providers. You know what I mean? Especially in an emergency situation. If you live in a rural place and you already have to drive 45 minutes or something to the nearest hospital, that's it. Like, you don't really, I guess there's really not much you can do. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have the space or the chance to make sure that you're going to go to a place that's going to take good care of you. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to a restaurant and you're looking up the reviews. Like, you just need to go be seen, especially if it's an emergency. And I think a lot of doctors could do well to try and decolonize their practice and decolonize their thinking on their role, because even the very humblest of providers will still have problems. They'll still have bias, and they can still hurt people. Mm-hmm. And there's really not a lot of checks and balances. So, like, part of the issue from the nursing perspective, because I have a lot of friends who are nurses, because everybody's paying attention to what's going on, where a lot of people are, and they're saying, well, there's no accountability because none of the CEOs have to have a medical background. You can't take their license away. You can't call the board to investigate. They don't have to be held responsible to anyone. So there's a push to make sure that people in these roles, at the CEOs and administrative leads at the hospitals, have to have a medical background at least, or have to have some sort of licensure that they can be held liable with. Because in my state, if you have a nurse, and one of those women was a patient in Texas, she was about to give birth to twins, and she was trying to triage her, like, while she was in active labor, active contractions. And she's the one that gave birth to twins like 8 minutes after this video was taken.
Right now. Is your due date 11? What? How many times have you been pregnant? 3. This is your 3rd pregnancy? Yes. You have 2 babies at home? It's in my ass. You have 2 babies at home? Who's your doctor?
Lang is her doctor. Y'all treat all your patients like this, or just the Black ones? Her due
I
date
just
is the
said it was
10th.
the 10th. Her due date is the 10th.
She got 3 pregnancies, 2 babies at home. I bet y'all listen next time. When you found out you was delivering at this hospital, your ass should have changed doctors.
Thank you.
Everybody say how they treat people here.
In Texas, you call the board of nursing and you say, I have a complaint. This person, did this, and they'll just like freeze their license. So they can't put people in harm's way again, right? Until they assess. But the administrators and CEOs, there's no accountability for them. And so that is a challenge. And I'm absolutely, I'm all for universal healthcare. That's like been one of the things I've been very adamant about. Like that's one of the only solutions. But right now, I just wanted to inform you that people are trying to push for these administrators and these CEOs and wealthy people in charge of the hospitals be held to some sort of accountability through licensure.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of funny because we live in a country where our Health and Human Services Secretary is not even a medical professional.
That's true. Yeah, he's causing a lot of problems.
Yeah. I would like to switch gears just slightly because I want to talk about your Native American background and how that intersects with a profession, medical profession. The reason why is because you work in a field where you're dedicated to helping other people. And from what I'm learning through Native American culture is that even when the European invaders came, and if people really want to know, they can look up the real history of Thanksgiving. I put it in air quotes because what thanks for what. But there was this sense of duty to help what they thought were just newcomers, to help them, when it came to how they took care of themselves, how they cultivated the land, navigating the land, so on and so forth. And so it feels like this cycle continues where the assistance and the help that you give is not necessarily returned in kind within this country. And it feels like a 500-year-long theme that keeps cycling over and over.
Yeah, it's true. Our ceremonial practices, our prayers, our ability to make our own medicines was illegal until like 1978. You know what I'm saying? Like my aunt practiced medicine, but she had to do it under the cover of darkness. She wasn't allowed, you know what I mean? Because the thing is, like, her ceremonies, her practices were outlawed, and she was doing an illegal practice, even though it was something passed down to her from many, many generations. And all of the studies, obviously everybody's like, I believe in science. And I think a lot of people who refuse to let go of white supremacist ideology are very upset to learn that indigenous practices and indigenous science, all our claims are usually proven right. You know what I'm saying? They're like, smudging doesn't do anything, with the sage bundles. It's a closed practice that we do to cleanse our spirit, but it's been proven to cut down on bacteria and airborne pathogens. You know what I mean? And they're like, you guys are crazy. But it's like, no, we're not. Like, our ancestors knew to harvest this herb. They knew what to use it for. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, they're barely finding out that, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's like the Western framing of all of the knowledge is they always want to take credit for things that are not theirs. So especially with regards to medicine, there's a lot of times people would be like, oh, that's crazy. You do this such and such thing when you're sick. That doesn't make any sense. And then, you know what I mean? I'll just wait it out. And then a couple of years later, they'll be like, science confirms that this practice helps people. And so it's very much like, you know, I talk about people not letting go of their white supremacy ideology because like they don't even realize they're clutching to it. And they don't even realize that it informs their behavior. And to non-natives, it's very common, and there's no reason to bring it up because it's normal and this is the way it's always been, but that also is a lie. You know what I mean? I just had to have a conversation with my kids recently about how the concept of white started here. Before this country, they were just known as Europeans or French or, you know what I mean, Spanish or whatever. But here, you know what I mean, they had to enforce this. And so it's annoying, you know what I mean? Because you're just like, yeah, my aunt did this years ago and she knew that this herb was good for this and she knew eating this was good for this. And she was a criminal, this sweet old woman, you know what I mean, just trying to provide for other people. Mm-hmm. She was a criminal because the United States government hates our existence. And they always have.
Yeah. This reminds me of something I learned not too long ago. But let me share this with you. A lot of people did not know this, but I find this quite profound. It says cesarean sections, also known as C-sections, were performed in African history, particularly in East Africa, with records from the 19th century describing successful procedures in kingdoms like Bunyoro Kitara. European observers were astonished by the advanced techniques, which include the use of banana wine for anesthesia and anesthetic cleansing, cauterization to control bleeding, and specialized wound care to ensure high survival rates for both mother and child. This predates many advancements in Western medicine at the time and contributed to the global understanding of the procedure. So ultimately, this really shows that there is knowledge and scientific advancement in indigenous cultures, whether you want to go to American indigenous, African indigenous, Australian indigenous, different Asian indigenous cultures, hell, even European indigenous cultures before colonization and exploitation that happened even in their cultures. So it just goes to show that really a lot of our ancestors had it right the first time. Just some people are just now catching up.
Yeah, it's true, and I think that the Western bias causes a lot of harm to Black and Indigenous people specifically because, you know what I'm saying, they will scoff at your practices that you're using, you know what I mean, based off your knowledge, and all they have are simple tools that capitalism offered, and there's no ingenuity here, you know. Cesarean sections, I mean, even late into the 19th century here, mothers were dying in mass because these people wouldn't even wash their hands in between, you know what I mean? They'd do an autopsy and then they'd go do a pelvic exam on a woman who's about to deliver. Like, who knows how many problems they caused, how many infections they brought. And that's the thing, is like, our people are like, you people were conquered, and it's like, you guys were dirty and you made everybody sick. That's not a win. That's, you know what I'm saying? We found who the cannibals were, and it were not our people. Okay, it wasn't. It's just like, I imagine being a settler, it might be more freeing to just be like, they didn't know that much. maybe I'll be humble about it, and maybe I'll just, because it's not like we're not trying to share our knowledge with a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? We want what's best practice for everybody, but not everybody's ready for that conversation. You know, and it's just like I feel bad, but not that bad for people who refuse to take the knowledge and try to be humble and understand that we are being taught and informed from centuries of people that have lived here. Not just, you know what I mean? Like thousands of years. I mean, they found footprints in what is now known New Mexico 2,000 years ago. Like your history is not the definitive answer to anything. If anything, it's a really horrible playbook of playing yourself, because there are no victors with mass sickness and starvation and poverty. You know, I can't imagine even the wealthy people like are happy. They seem like miserable assholes. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Elon Musk does not look like a happy person. I've never seen him smile. He's not a happy person. He's a miserable person. You know what I mean? And why? For an ideology that doesn't even serve you. Even though you're wealthy, you're still a miserable sack of crap. It's just, I don't know. Like, this is why things are becoming a little bit more. I did an interview with some students at Rice, and they were like, what do you feel about gatekeepers? And I'm like, because, you know, we had this person named Jacqueline Keeler who made this Pretendian list. I don't know if you've heard of it. And she added enrolled tribal members onto the list, and it just ended up being like a tool to kind of manipulate people. And you know what I'm saying? Like there's like this habits that even indigenous people can have where they are still colonizers because of their behaviors, because their behaviors are such that they only want to see themselves advance and they want to hold other people back. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, you can't. Yes, you can. Your brain can be informed by, you know what I'm saying, two different things. And there's a lot of dedication to the spirit. If you really want to be on good terms with like the creator and your own people and the earth, like you have to, it's like constant work. You know what I'm saying? And there are people who will abandon that work and abandon the teachings to advance their own, you know, they'll to pick themselves up. And it's like, in some respects, I get it. Like you want to keep your information sacred. Some of the tribes down here have closed, you know, practices, and you can't film, you can't come to this event and make a TikTok video here because it's disrespectful. And also, not only were these practices outlawed and illegal, but they're for our people. And they're not to be, and you know what I mean? It's a protection. You want to protect against exploitation. And then there's people who are like, you're not native enough if you don't have an ancestor on the census rolls. And, you know, there's like some people who would say that I'm not indigenous enough. And there was nothing I will ever be able to say to them that will make them accept me, you know, for whatever reasons. Because some of my ancestors, the borders did cross us. And they were here the whole time. And we didn't come on a boat. And we don't have some settlers in our lineage. But people, you know, when I tell people like, yeah, I think my great grandmother was born in what's now Mexico, they'll be like, oh, you're a settler. And it's like, that's not, who do you think? You think that everybody, so erasure only on this part of the continent. You know what I mean? It's a very difficult conversation to have with people because there's a lot of differences in perception, and we've been pushing, you know what I mean? There's white ideology that's been taught in schools that, you know, residential boarding schools, many did not survive. And so it's, you know, most of the people writing the census rolls down were white settlers. And then you take a brown population, a dark skinned population, I mean, they would leave us off of that, wouldn't they? And it's some people will accept this discussion and some people will not. And it is what it is, you know?
Yeah, like people. One thing I try to let people in my circle know, and I'm trying to be more vocal about this, is that Indigenous Americans range from the Inuits all the way in the Arctic Circle, all the way down to the very tip of Chile and everywhere in between. Like, for instance, look at former Bolivian President Evo Morales. Evo Morales is an indigenous Bolivian.
Yeah.
If you look at him, he looks not much different than an indigenous American.
Yeah.
North American. And so what happened? Like, for instance, there are indigenous Argentinians, indigenous Brazilians that still live their traditional lives in the Amazon. So, and please correct me if I am wrong, but New Mexico, California, Nevada, Colorado, Texas. In my head now, I'm saying that's occupied Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily the United States, because me saying, "Oh well, that's the United States," that's no different than me calling Gaza Israel.
Exactly. And there's a lot of people who are refusing to consider the United States an occupation, an occupying force.
Yeah.
Because they identify as Americans on this here stolen land. And so they want land back for Palestine, but they don't want land back here because they're not willing to give up, you know what I mean, their privileges.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole, we could talk for a long time about that, because it's a very, like, a lot of my indigenous peers are like, look at this shit. Like, look at these people who are just like, there's just like, you want to be holier than thou. You always want to be the savior, and you're not. Sometimes you need to take a step back. And you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody wants to complain and say humans are bad. Humans caused all these problems. Indigenous people did not. We lived within balance. We lived within our means. We did not have jails here. We did not have, you know what I mean, people being left to die. We didn't even leave people's bones on, you know what I mean? We had our own graveyards. Like, it's not, it's just, it honestly hurts, you know what I'm saying, for people to want to posture themselves in a position of like a white savior, right? Like, I'm this, and I'm for Palestine, and refuse to use those same ideologies and thoughts and apply them here to the United States. You will find many leftists who are not for land back, and it's a problem. It is a problem because people want to try, and it's another form of erasure, saying that all people are bad. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? Our people were here cultivating. They were scientists. They were caretakers. All of it was here a long time before these people came and changed it. I mean, the atmosphere changed, the water changed, the food changed, and none of it for the better. None of it at all. And going back to, like, are you indigenous enough? Like, there's this woman that I know, her name's Lucille Contreras, and she is the CEO of the Texas Tribal Buffalo Project. And she's rematriating bison and buffalo back to here on these lands. And it improves the soil, it improves the water. You know what I'm saying? She's able to help people. A lot of indigenous people lost their SNAP, or their SNAP was cut, and they were able to provide food to them because of what they're doing. And it's just like, she's doing all of this amazing work. And then I'll be on, like, looking at her page, and somebody will make some offhanded comment like, oh, you're a Lipan Apache, that you're not even a federally recognized tribe. And it's just like insane to me, because it's like, why would you say that? Like, there's just like this hierarchy in play right now that is, I feel, is dangerous, because we're supposed to honor each other, you know what I mean, not compete. And you know, and she's doing, like, she's amazing. Like, there's nobody would doubt, no, like, you have no right to, like, to make a comment like that. And I only bring it up because it's not just one person. It's like a harmful idea. Like, most of the federally recognized tribes in this state of Texas, Texas wasn't their original homelands. And the process for going through federal recognition goes through the government that wants to continue to erase us and remove us and displace us further. So it's not, I don't know. It's just, I wish people understood the challenges, like, still ahead. You know what I mean? We're certainly still fighting a lot of battles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is, like, for instance, I think there was I'm blanking on the year the law was passed, but there was a law that was called the Indian Removal Act here in the United States. That was essentially a ethnic cleansing law.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we don't demonize. And also, I said this on RBN earlier today. Some people may get upset with me about this, but I'm sticking by it. I'm standing 10 toes down with my full chest. But if terrorism is, and you know, committing acts, political acts, in order to wield power over someone and to instill fear, then what do you call every single president of the United States that has either caused or maintained the erasure of Native Americans on this land?
Exactly.
I mean, would it be fair to say that they are all terrorists, from Washington all the way to Trump? Because, I mean, by definition, they actually fit that definition.
Yeah, no, they do. There are no good presidents. There are no good American presidents. None. Andrew Jackson hung multiple, I think it was the Dakota 38. Or no, it was Lincoln. It was a Lincoln he hung. It was like the largest mass execution of the time. Like, they are all guilty of harming us and continual land theft, you know. And it's really, you know what I mean, like, we barely get a few wins here and there, but land back is about returning the land to a healthier state, you know what I'm saying, and putting it back into the hands of the people who know how to protect the sacred. And yeah, and there are no good American presidents, and the United States is an occupation, albeit one that's probably going to end soon, in my opinion. And I'm happy for it. I think that's a great thing. I mean, like, there's indigenous people being abducted by ICE right now. Tribal IDs or no. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just, I think it's because a lot of us are dark, that people have this kind of, like, bias against dark people. Like, yeah. A lot of us originated from closer to the equator. I don't know why. You know what I mean? It's a bad thing. And it's not anything. I know there's a lot of natives who are very fair skinned, and I would never, you know what I mean? Like, you're indigenous, like, but it's just like, I don't think we have the same, there's no benefit of a doubt given to us, I'll say, you know?
I got you. Yeah. And, you know, as far as what this country has continuously done, you know, you mentioned land back. does that mean that many of us who are currently on this land, does that mean that we have to leave and go back to wherever our ancestors came from? Or does it mean something else?
We would not treat people the way the United States government has treated people. And that's the other thing, is like a lot of our teachings are about honoring people. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are all on the medicine wheel. We are all represented, and we are all one people, and all of our fates are intertwined. Mm-hmm. Why would we treat people the way they treated us? That would make us such hypocrites. And I don't know a single person who really does want to harm anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll joke about sending a lot of settlers back on boats, but you know what I mean? It's only because a lot of settlers are racist. You know what I mean? Like, I would clearly want racists to not be in areas where I am or where my kids are, you know, but no, we're not trying to get rid of everybody. That's not what it's about. It's about returning the land to a space of regeneration and healing. We're in a position right now in the United States where our soil has lost a lot of its nutrients because of monocultures. It's just where you plant only one thing, and it erodes the soil over time. And so we're getting to a place where even the soil's contaminated. The soil, the air, the water. All of the people who are fighting for land back want clean water, clean air, clean food, and we are not the type of people to let people starve if we can help it, you know? So anybody who has any, like, I know there's a lot of racists and bigots out there who are like, you guys are racist against white people, and it's like, that doesn't exist, first of all, but I bet you're afraid because if you know what I mean, you saw what your people did, and you should be scared because that wasn't right, you know, but that doesn't mean we're going to be like you.
Yeah. It reminds me of the phrase, they're lucky that we're looking for equality and not revenge.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, to see all of the harm still being done and all of the poisoning of all of everything that we need to survive is so, it just hurts on a deep level. And for people to just try and say like, oh, well, it's people's fault. It's not, it's capitalism and colonial's fault that, you know what I mean? You're getting radiated shrimp from the store and your kids have all these diseases and sicknesses because of the pollution, you know? People were like, climate change isn't real. It's like, we knew pretty early on that it was real and that it was harmful.
Yeah, definitely. My goodness, there's so much wealth of knowledge to learn. I'm trying to connect with more Native groups, especially within my local area. I'm in Florida. And so I'm trying to connect with them to learn more. You know, I would like to, because I feel like, okay, my ancestors were stolen, they were kidnapped, they were brought here. So it's no different than your house is broken into, and while your house is broken into, then the people who broke into your house also brought in one of their hostages. How does the person whose home that was broken into feel about the hostage? Well, they have solidarity with the hostage, and the hostage has solidarity with the homeowner. And so I feel like while the best way I can put it is a guest in your home, I want to honor it as much as possible by listening to and adhering to the best practices and how to take care of this land that I and my people have been on for, 400 years now.
A while.
Yeah. funny because they keep telling us to go back, and it's like, well, y'all kept us here for 400 years. Something, it's like, talk to your ancestors. Why did they keep us here? But anyways.
Yeah. And that's, those people, they're speaking from such a place of fear. They don't want to go back where they came from. You know what I'm saying? They're afraid, like, oh, are you sure you don't want to go eat intestines and blood pudding or whatever it is? Yes.
Let's talk about that, because they always go like, okay, I don't know if you've noticed this trend, but there's always seems to be this trend of everybody's saying that, oh, white men, and it's not all, I don't think it is, but a good number of white men say that they are always thinking about the Roman Empire. And there's part of me that's like, okay, so if you're always thinking about the Roman Empire and you're praising the Roman Empire, why are you still here?
Mm-hmm.
If you want a homogeneous society, why not just go back to the area of the planet where your body had adapted to the lower amounts of sunlight, so therefore your melanin amounts were actually lower, so then you can actually be there instead. Because it's like the Zionist Israelis complaining that, oh, I gotta use sunscreen because I'll get a sunburn easily. And it's like, well, yeah, because your people aren't actually from this land.
Mm-hmm. And the olive tree pollen allergies that they have. Oh, no. But you invented hummus. Okay, sure you did. Sure you did. You can't handle spices. You can't handle heat. You can't handle... I'm gonna try and tone it down a bit, but we know who the real... I don't know. It's like, that's what you get for being unappreciative of what you have. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and then it's just same thing where they're glorifying, like, for instance, the Vikings, right? Meanwhile, from what I know so far, I have to learn more. I have to read more. But the Vikings actually embraced other cultures.
I'm not sure. They found some arrowheads in some of their Vikings. They met with us, and they have the shrapnel to prove it. So I just recently saw that the other day, and I was laughing. I was like, the conquerors. You know what I mean? They got sent back. From what I understand, the Moors and people of, like, African royalty had better relations with indigenous people here, because there's artifacts on both continents that were traded for. Because that's how you do things. That's how you're fair. You know what I mean? But I guess if you have nothing to trade or barter with, you have to steal. I mean, that's what Thanksgiving was, you know what I mean? The massacre that happened there, the settlers didn't have any food. They didn't have anything to eat. They were stealing from the tribes. And that's how it all started. They didn't have any knowledge,
Yeah. It's wild to me how, I think, now I'm thinking about it, in an area where food is actually more scarce because they don't have the abundance of living closer to the equator in a more temperate climate, and things get a lot more scarce, especially in the wintertime. It makes me think, well, because of there was scarcity, then they fought against each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then they thought, well, we need to take that wherever we go because it's going to be the same thing. In reality, it wasn't that way.
It certainly didn't need to be. No.
And so when they came here with, firearms, something that they had to design, they came in with armor because of firearms and trying to guard against that and always fighting against one another. They came to a people that didn't need to keep as warm throughout the entire year. We have more robust seasons. And so it feels like they just, part of it was ignorance, but part of it was a lack of solidarity with even their own. So then they applied that to the native and indigenous peoples here.
I see it a lot as being raised by greed. And if you come from a oppressed class because of the system of kings and queens exploiting, instead of, rising up with your fellow poors and working class people, they came here with the intention to make themselves kings. They never really did want to be. I think that's what they wanted. You know what I mean? That greed and that envy of the crown. They brought that over here. They didn't want to just be on the same plane as the rest of us. They didn't want to be equal. And I think that's the problem, And I just want to add, like, some Mayan ancestors and people from thousands and thousands of years ago were developing such advanced weaponry. They were even smelting platinum, which they were hundreds of years ahead of the British Empire.
Wow.
And you know what I mean? Again, and it's just like we're all taught in school, all the natives died. They're all gone. But we're so glad they taught us everything before they died. You know what I mean? And it's just like you didn't base your entire knowledge system off of our knowledge system and think that you really knew more than us, did you? And they did, and they still do, and we still have to challenge it all the time because it's a lack of respect, I think,
Well, I mean, even a lot of the democratic principles that were learned from the natives here, right? Like, I mean, if we're going to praise something, we might as well give our flowers to the people who, we learned it from. And so natives, you guys had that system already. And while we're giving flowers, let me give another flower. The gift economy was, chef's kiss. Like, it's basically we don't need money. It's, you need something, I'll do for you. And basically it's what I call the I got you next economy. Like, okay, you just had a kid with your significant other. Okay, you need a home. Let's build you a home. All right, your home is built. Next time when I need something, you got me. Okay. And it's a really symbiotic, reciprocal relationship that they had. And I'm like, why don't we just go back to that?
Yeah.
It's so brilliant.
It's a cyclical system.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because you can weave another basket. You can, you know what I mean? And it's just like nothing was wasted. And gifts is just another way of saying I honor you, I respect you, I'm thinking about you. Things like that. There were a lot of crafts and a lot of things made, and everybody's like, you guys were all at war with each other, and then why did we trade? You don't, like, you see a lot of our, you know what I mean, like artifacts traded amongst each other. Like it wasn't like that, and it's just this really Western bias that that we couldn't get along. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? Just because you guys had issues with everybody else doesn't mean that we did. I mean, yeah, I love that I was informed early on that like making something for somebody was a lot more special than buying something for somebody. It's not just about the art, the sharing. It's about your skills. You get to practice your skills. You get to hone your skills and make them better. And that's a craft. It's education. So it's not, you know what I mean? It's like none of it is ever self-serving. It's like community serving, you know, all of it. And it's crazy, you know what I mean? Just hearing people who are just like, I'm so tired of the way things are. And it's like, okay, well, you could learn about how things used to be. And you can let that inform you so that you don't have to feel like you're trapped in the system and you're doing things outside of it.
Yeah.
You have to break away from it, you know?
Yeah. You remember that store in the mall called Things Remembered?
Oh man, I used to work at a mall. Things Remember. I don't know. Was it like a boutique shop or?
It was basically like a kind of like a gift shop that you can get for like different people. It's called Things Remembered, and it's kind of funny because when you talked about how they used to make things and then trade the things that they made or they gift them to different people, I'm like, man, Things Remember ain't got nothing on Native American culture.
So well, and it's just trinkets, right?
Mhm.
Like trinkets, things you don't really need, things you're not going to really like cherish. Because we're in this economy that doesn't cherish anything. It's like it's all disposable. You know, like you'll hear, I don't know, I've heard a couple of boomers being like, they don't make things like they used to. And it's like, yeah, your refrigerators back in the day were supposed to last like at least 30 years. And now we're lucky to get one that lasts 5.
Yeah.
Because of capitalism, you know. But yeah, I love sending gifts and I love supporting artists, you know what I mean? Like if you get somebody a piece of art somebody made with their hands, that is so much more meaningful than just like, I don't know, something that you'd pick up at the mall. You know what I mean? Like how much time went into it. And then the ethical part of it is like, did a child have to make this against their will? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be participating in the slave trade. So
Yeah.
anyway, like our overconsumption is definitely a problem. And I'd much rather give money to artists and people making crafts than, you know what I'm saying, than some big corporation.
Yeah. Just a couple more questions before I let you go. Like, so do you dabble in some art?
I do. I do. So I'm gonna say I'm not a beater. I want to, but I think with my nervous system issues, it's just not for me. My daughters are starting to bead, and that's really fun. But I like to paint, and I did photography for a really long time when I was younger. And so one of the things I do is I buy animal skulls, or people will. Oh, sorry, real quick. Thank you. I love you. My daughter. So I will take animal skulls and process them and paint them and add different things. I'll make like little jewelry and put them on there and stuff like that. And I make bracelets and things. I like keeping my hands busy, but it is hard. It's much harder. I did have a couple of pieces that were able to go to other people that I was really proud of. It was there was a woman who needed cancer therapy and she didn't have money for it. So we were donating items to sell to help raise funds. And I made a really pretty, I did a coyote skull that I embellished with some precious stones and I painted it, hand painted. And that's one of the things I like to do.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I got into photography years ago, and so I I have a fairly decent eye, even though I'm still, you know, what's more green than an amateur? That's what I am basically. So
So humble. I'm sure your pictures are great. I don't know.
but that's something that I like to dabble into, and so I think art is something that is intrinsic to human beings that I think that's one of the beauties of being a human being is to be able to express ourselves in the physical world around us. And you don't see that as much within the animal kingdom, which I think makes us pretty unique.
Mhm.
And so I would love to see more of us doing that. I already spoke to some filmmakers, which they are wonderful. They are anti-imperialist filmmakers, and I think that art is such an important piece when it comes to just the human condition and us being able to define who we are instead of it just being uh, something academic or just matter of fact. It shows the full scope and full scale of what we're capable of and how we feel deeply on the inside, and it's made manifest on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that some of the earliest forms of art are like self-portraits and, you know what I mean, like landscape art. Because I think that art is a way for you to help identify not just yourself, but you know what I mean, like the universal consciousness. It's one of the few ways that we're able to tap into that, I feel. And then it comes it comes so easily to a lot of us. If you give anybody, you know what I mean, like some colors or some paint, like most people really enjoy art. There should be no reason for us to compete with each other. It's an expression. It's part of the human experience. You're supposed to enjoy art. You're supposed to feel something. And it's, one of the earliest ways of showing our civilization and showing our growth as peoples is art. There's like the cave paintings, there's the pottery, like it was very intrinsic to healthy societies. And I think that yeah, especially right now with the AI and everything, it's just an overlooked, kind of a disrespected art form in some ways. And I really do I like a lot of the artists against AI and people like that who are just like, no, there's no way to replace that. There's no reason that you should ever try to replace the human condition with a robot.
Absolutely, man. I really do appreciate having this conversation, because I glean a lot of knowledge and wisdom from you, even though I think you're younger, but that doesn't matter. Your wisdom is absolutely essential and important. So I think I would advocate for more people to speak to anybody who is native, because I think while we are on this land, I think it's incumbent upon us to learn more from you all as possible. So then we could really see ourselves in you and say, well, if this happened to me and my people, how would I feel? And then we start to identify and go, well, yeah, of course they feel this way. And then that builds more solidarity among us.
I really appreciate having this time to talk with you, and I like our conversations away from here too. I'm grateful that you're in a place where you're like, there's a lot of knowledge that I would love to incorporate into my own lifestyles, because that's really like, I want you to be well, you know what I mean? And it's not just about like acknowledging whose land you're on. It's about like what did these people do before pre-contact? How did they survive? What did they eat? And a lot of it is like going back to what our bodies, our spirits, you know what I mean, the physical world around us is actually needing. It's not, you know what I mean, like the earth needs us to walk on it, and we could die and the earth would probably be okay, but we're supposed to be in this together, you know what I'm saying? And the water is alive, and people don't have respect for that. They don't have and it's like, that's why it's all poisoned and polluted. And it's like, if you would just try to help us instead of being in front, you know what I'm saying, I think we could accomplish a lot more. Because everywhere you look, it doesn't matter where you are, I promise you, there's indigenous activists fighting these, you know, data centers, fighting, you know what I mean, pesticides and the water, like they just need support. Like, and you would help yourself in that, because you would learn a little bit more, and you would be able to be in a position where you're not too an exploiter. You're somebody who's living within, you know, you're living with the land. You're honoring and respecting the land, and that would be good for all individuals, I think.
Mm.
But I'm really grateful to be able to talk with you. I have not done an interview in a really long time, so I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, it's always great to see you. You know, and I'd love to have you back on again, really just to, you know, get your thoughts on different things, because you know, you have a very unique perspective that also elevates the conversation. So
Thank you.
anything that you have coming up that you would like to talk about or bring up, or, you know, that you have coming up soon, or any parting words for people who may be listening in?
I just want to say for people, especially in Texas, there are a lot of threats to our water right now. And you too can become a water protector if you join us. Like I said, I'm disabled and I'm physically not able to show up like I used to. So the best thing I can do is spread word of mouth. So in Corpus Christi, a lot of Karankawa members, the tribe in Texas, are fighting desalination plans for Corpus Christi. Desalination is really bad for the environment, is not going to meet the crisis of water shortages. And so they could definitely use some support. We have a lot of data centers being built, and we, again, need a lot of voices, amplification on all of these things that are happening. So if I could just ask very kindly for anybody listening to this to please look up what local indigenous activists are doing in your area and see if you can lend a hand.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you so very much for joining me, Miss Delilah. It's awesome to have you once again, and I cannot wait to talk to you again. Please do not be a stranger.
Okay, thanks for having me. It was so good to see you. Hugs.
Hugs back to you. All right.
Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye. Hey, you just watched a Kind Connections podcast. Thanks so much for watching. If you would like to see more, you can click right here. And thank you so very much. And don't forget to hit subscribe.